Hey guys, it is Chad here from the Battle Warrior Podcast, and I'm just letting all you listeners know that the Battle Warrior Podcast episodes will be available across all podcast platforms, guys. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this brand new episode today.
Let's go.
Hey guys, welcome to Battle Warrior Podcast. It is Chad back, and we are creating episodes on chasing a new life through mental, physical, and spiritual and financial wellness. But guys, we're just making a life on perseverance, on overcoming and creating a better life through our trials here, guys. So with that in case, guys, we have a phenomenal guest coming from actually one of my favorite countries because it's a neighboring country of ours. But in general here, guys, he is the leader of the global movement of men's naked yoga. We are going to tap into the humor behind that. He is a trailblazer. He survived a boulder attack. Yes, the boulder attacked him. And in general, built retreat centers in Costa Rica built around yoga, and created two things here: the AYAMA philosophy, or you can jump in, tell me something different on that one. But and then there's a beautiful special project that's coming down the road that's going to be released here pretty soon. And it is called Stop Stretching, which is going to be his, I'm going to say, number one best-selling book, but we'll let Amazon determine that one here. But first and foremost, guys, welcome Yogi Aaron to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me here. It's nice to know you. Good
Absolutely.
conversations before we got started. So, yeah.
That is the beauty of creating this podcast in general. And I'm going to tell it to a listeners here, guys. We are creating this information because we ran the path. We've been through the perseverance. We're still struggling with perseverance in general, but we want to give back to the community, and this is a way to do it.
Absolutely. For sure.
And let's just jump into it right away because first and foremost, I highlighted the first thing, and I'm like, this is absolutely amazing, especially with the person that fixed his knee doing yoga.
Yes.
How did you create that movement?
Which one are we talking? The AYAMA movement or the other one?
the first men's naked yoga.
That's a long story. So I mean, the short answer is I went to a boys boarding school when I was growing up. And so there was a couple of things that kind of happened simultaneously, but I think a lot of that was influenced by me going to an all boys boarding school from grades 9 to 12 and just kind of really experiencing that sort of male bonding camaraderie. And I kind of feel like in the gay world, I kind of experienced it a little bit, but not really. And one of my fondest memories, and this is like a very non-sexual thing, it's just more of like a life thing, is going on canoe trips and spending a lot of time in northern Canada. And we would all just skinny dip. And, I remember this one time we were on Lake Athabasca and there was this big cliff and there's 30 naked boys. And we weren't, well, I guess we were boys, but we were like 16, 17 at the time. And we're scrambling up this kind of cliff naked and jumping off of it. And you kind of look at sort of that male bonding experience. And I thought to myself, this is what's missing. Because there's so much stigma around nakedness. People are either A, shy, or B, they kind of equate it to sexuality. And being naked has got nothing to do with sex. And what I started doing this naked yoga group when I moved to New York City, and I wasn't in my mind when I went to New York, it wasn't my goal, but there was sort of like a pressure cooker of events that sort of coincided shortly after I moved to New York, where I went to that idea and I thought, you know what, why not do it? It's there. And I was walking across, I remember the day so well. I was trying to think of a name for it. And I was like, what should I call it? Like, and I was walking in the middle of 6th Avenue, Avenue of Americas, crossing over 23rd Street. And it was like a ray of sun hit at the top of my head. And it was like hot nude yoga. And I called it that. And I had my very first class, and it was really successful. I was so nervous. I had 18 people show up to it. But my second class, I had almost 40 people show up to it. And all these guys at the end of class said they had never experienced anything like that in their life. And all of them were so appreciative of like the level of community and that feeling of brotherhood, which is what I wanted to engender. And I don't know, it's just, there's something that's so unique about like stripping away the layers of who we are, and what, you know, the most obvious layers are clothes. And everybody always thinks like, oh, it's a class about nudity. No, it's not. You actually forget that you're naked within the first 30 seconds. Like, it's literally 30 seconds. And then you're like, okay, whatever. And then you're so busy trying to keep up with the yoga class that you completely forget, you know, anything else. And then all you're left with is like this kind of sense of rawness of who you are, and just like everybody just comes together in a very different and unique way. So I kind of started it, and I thought it'll last 6 months, and then it ended up becoming this global phenomenon. So funny story, I close to the end of my hot nude yoga stint, I took a group of guys to Australia. And one of the places I wanted to take them to was the Big Rock, you know, the big, you know, red rock, Ayers Rock. And so I had planned this trip, and we had a guide, and we were on like, you know, this bus. I think it was about 20 of us. We're going to Ayers Rock. We get to the gate to enter the park. And the guy who comes out and he goes, "Are you that Naked Yoga group?" And I'm like, it was the most funniest thing. It was so random. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. How did they know? Was there like these checkpoints? The naked guys are coming, watch out, you know. It was just so funny and so random that somehow our reputation literally preceded us in a big way. So
You caught us.
yes, they were so worried that we were going to climb up, strip down, and, you know, do something naked on their rock. But it was just really funny.
Yeah, you're not like the first one that probably did it.
No. They get all kinds of people up there doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, no, it's real smiling at the same time. I'm gonna say it this way, because the sense of freedom that people don't realize what occurs when it comes at, and it actually equates to like a mental breakthrough. And
Yeah.
you know, physically everyone's like, hey, you know, we're hanging out with people, it's naked, it's kind of weird. But all of a sudden, like when it clicks, when the sense of freedom clicks in your mind, it's almost, you become unstoppable.
Yeah. That's what it's really about. And the interesting thing too is like in most yoga classes you go to today, especially in America and in big cities and these, you know, special yoga studios or gyms, it's always like, you know, who's wearing the best clothes and who's got the latest, you know, whatever. And when you strip everything away, you don't know if somebody's like a starving artist or a rich Wall Street banker, especially like living in New York. And it was sort of like the equalizer, you know, the great equalizer, that we're all, you know, at some level equal in some way. And from that place coming together and connecting, it was just really potent. I mean, you know, that sense of community is really the backbone of why it grew in the way that it grew.
And you had the number one thing that people strive so much to build in the marketing world,
Which is what?
Community.
Yeah, community, absolutely. It was very organic, and it was very unpushed. It wasn't manipulated at all. It was just very authentic. And I don't really think I actually tapped into that sense of community until some of my students started coming up to me and going, "Aaron, you know, I love this community." And I'd be like, oh, okay, great. You know, community has always been something in my life. So, and then they're like, when are we going to go on a retreat? Let's have a retreat. And it was because of them asking that led to me hosting retreats. And I led a retreat up in upstate New York and near Albany area. And then I led one of my next retreats was in Hawaii. And then, you know, that led to Costa Rica. And then, you know, and then I said Australia and many other places. And it was from traveling around that I was actually able to start connecting this kind of global community. There was other things that I did as well, like create DVDs and, you know, doing workshops, but it was doing those retreats that really kind of engendered that community.
So what, because my brain's going into two different worlds here. So like how you're explaining that, I'm like, that's like an entrepreneurship dream. Because like, and I'm gonna explain it this way. So like all of us are trying, like the new age online marketing is exactly what you just laid out in the last, like, let's say 10 years or whatever the time period is. And I'm like, you're naturally doing it with something you love. And I'm like, you know how many people like struggle, fail, and it's naturally just unfolding.
It did, but I also worked my ass off to make it happen, you know, to promote it. And you know, there's a lot of marketing stuff that kind of came up because of it. But yeah, you're right. And you know, I always say, like, people always say to me, like, Aaron, you're so lucky. And I say, well, luck hasn't got anything to do with it. There was a door open and I just walked through it. But I also worked hard, you know, once I got on the other side of that door. And I feel like a lot of people in today's world, especially with these kind of Gen Z or I don't know who they are. But these kinds of people kind of expect like success to happen instantaneously because a video goes viral or something. But that's like, you know, it's like winning the lottery if that happens. It's not typical. And usually if a video goes viral, it goes viral for like, you know, 10 seconds and then people forget about it. So you have to work hard, and that's always been like a motivating factor for me all my life. I'm just very entrepreneurial. I'm always coming up with ideas and trying different things and having fun with it.
Well, and I'm, you know, you're explaining exactly what we call it, the, you know, in the normal world it's the grind, and I'm like, no, you're just doing what you love to do and you're all in on it because you love what you do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
No, it's a and there's one question I do want to ask you about that because I'm gonna go two sides of it here, just in general. Did you know about all that marketing stuff prior of doing that?
I knew absolutely nothing about marketing. I think so. There's a couple of things that you should know about me. Number one is I've always been entrepreneurial. Like when I was 6 years old, I complained to my parents that I wanted more money. And they said, go get a job. And so I started delivering papers and I collected bottles. You know, that was the time when you would collect like those glass Coke bottles and return them for 10 cents. So I was like, as a kid, I was always trying to find ways to make money and thinking about money constantly, like not like obsessing about, oh, I need money, but just like, how can I make more? How can I save it? What do I want to spend it on? That sort of thing. And then when as I got older, my parents divorced and my mother married a Jewish man, a Jewish businessman. And his name is David. And he, you know, to this day, I still thank him because he saw that potential within me. And in many ways, he's a very smart and intelligent business person. He's also has a high work ethic. And he really taught me the ins and outs of business, and how to make things happen, and cultivated that fire of entrepreneurialism in me. But I never really understood marketing. It was just like, got to get your message out there. And so when I started Hot New Yoga in New York, you know, my marketing ploy was just simple, you know, put as many flyers everywhere that I possibly could. I mean, this is 2001. We didn't have Facebook or Instagram or anything like that. So it was like, how can I get this thing to be as visible as possible? And that was all I really knew about marketing. And I always laugh because, these people that go to school for so many years to get a marketing degree, I'm like, you know what? Just shut up, go out and do it. Like, if you want to learn about marketing, just shut up, get out there, make it happen. And if it doesn't work, you try something out. I mean, I'm constantly, even now, like, with this whole stop stretching stuff, part of it is me learning how to message it properly. And that, I have to tell you something, like that whole like step of learning how to message is not easy. It's really difficult, but I also like dive into that difficultness. It's like, okay, that didn't work. Let's try something else. And you just keep doing it until you find something that sticks.
Yeah, and that's kind of the, I don't know, it's the beauty of it. To me, I wanted to go in that direction because what happens in this, I'm not saying this industry, but what happens with a lot of people is they overthink. And they're like, and I'm gonna use podcasting for example, and I'm gonna tease all you guys at podcasts. I've been in it for 2.5 years. I did a video of it a couple days ago on my Facebook on New Year's, and the thing about it is when you look at the number, to be honest, dude, I don't care about my downloads. Like, I want value driven podcasts. That's all I care. When you look at a certain, like the number one most downloaded episode, it came with these headphones. And I literally have a mic that is a studio quality mic sitting behind me. For some odd reason, it's not working right now. But all my magic is coming through this free set of headphones. And everyone's like, you got to invest, like I get the investing part. I get the, building the good studio and all that stuff. But people are, they get going. They make their first, and I want to joke around with the Blue Yetis, but the Blue Yetis start flying into the house. And then they're like, well, how do we do this? I'm like, how much money do you drop? Well, like $1,500. What? Just go.
I call that analysis paralysis. It's like when you start analyzing something too much, you get stuck in your head and then you just become paralyzed. And a lot of people are like just so risk adverse. I see risk and I just dive right into it. But not everybody is wired that way.
I'm pretty all in on risk. I got kicked in the nuts a little bit, and it's my podcast, I could say that, but like, I did some lessons this year that kind of kicked me in the nuts a little bit, and now I have to learn another lesson of trying to dig myself out of that hole. So it's a very aggressive mindset to where I want to go achieve stuff. So like if I want to do a race, I go. If I want to launch a product, I do it. It's something that's just part of it.
Yeah.
But I also have this filter that's developing, and I'm sure you have it, because I want to ask you about that too. But when you lay an idea on your lap and you kind of just ponder on it for a little bit, it's one of those like, I should do that. What I've learned is when you think about it, all of a sudden the obstacles start piling up. That means you have to do it.
Absolutely. I think that's a hard one to kind of like play with a little bit here, because I think that, in 2009, I had the opportunity to take over this yoga studio in LA. So I had my studio in New York and my studio in LA. And, there's a lot of reasons why I decided to do it. But part of it was because I just like to take on different projects, and it excited me. And the idea of living in New York and living in LA and living in Costa Rica, this tripod, and it really excited me. And I think looking back at it, part of my decision-making process was more ego-based and not so much it was purpose-based. In yoga, we use the word dharma. Like, it wasn't in line with my purpose. It wasn't part of my, purpose to do that. And it was also one of the hardest years of my life. And adding that studio made it really difficult. So that was like a huge kind of lesson to, be a little bit more, to sit with ideas a little bit more rather than saying necessarily yes to everything. Like, to kind of just go in and ask yourself, like, am I doing this because I'm of my ego, or am I really doing this because it's a challenge that I really want to dive into, and it can help me live more of, a purposeful life? And So that was a big lesson, expensive lesson too. But looking back at it, I'm so glad I did it. I mean, and like I can't believe I did it, like what I did that year. Oh my God. But looking back at it, I'm glad I did it, but it was definitely a challenge, no doubt.
I'm just chuckling because it's like I don't know, I'm learning in this walk that yes, you have to be budget conscious. I get it, but you know, what's the difference between $10 and $1,000? Just a couple zeros.
At the end of the day, it's just money, and money is energy, and money is not permanent. I mean, just when you think you get a lot of money, it's gone just like that. And the more money I've made, the more money, it's just gone through my fingers. And during the pandemic, when everything was sort of like closed down and we stopped having guests for like 8 months, and God, talk about nail biting. But that was like such a powerful lesson because we got rid of like all the stuff that we didn't need, like in terms of what we were spending on. And it really kind of gave us a chance to just kind of like look at like where are we wasting, and where can we divert resources into other areas that are actually helping us. So you're right about the zeros thing. It just, to me, it's like $10, $1,000. It doesn't really matter anymore.
And then speaking of that, because I know this next thing I want to tap into is the stop stretching, the brand new thing that's getting launched here. No, you know what? I'm not going to talk about it. Let you talk about it.
What part do you want to know about?
Let's say the process of creating a book.
So the quick story is that I started doing yoga when I was 18. And probably like most people doing yoga, I did it to stretch. I thought that yoga was about stretching. And really kind of very quickly, like right out of the gate, I hurt myself. And what happened was my back seized up one day on me. And my back had never done that before. So it was a really new experience for me at that moment. And once I fixed it, I thought, okay, now I need to stretch more so I don't have a bad back again. And what started to happen was I would stretch and then I would end up in pain like the next day. I remember I got into this really vigorous yoga style called the Ashtanga yoga. And when I got into Ashtanga yoga, it's a very aggressive style of practice. And I would always feel good right afterwards. But every single morning I woke up, it was like I could barely walk. And it'd be like, oh my God, I do not want to do this practice again. But then, of course, I would do it. And I just started to notice, like, I just started hurting myself more and more and more over the years, especially my neck. I developed this searing pain in my neck that used to shoot pain down into my arm and into my fingertips. And it kept happening. Like I would be in pain, stretch, do my yoga practice, stretch, and then be in pain again. And it all kind of culminated when I was around 45. I ended up in the surgeon's office. He was an orthopedic surgeon, and he was telling me that I might need a spinal fusion in my lower back. And that was a huge light bulb moment. There has been a few, but that was definitely one of them. And I said to myself, there has got to be a better way. This can't, like, what I'm doing is not working. It took me 25 years to figure that out. And because in the yoga world, like if you've got pain, the immediate response is, oh, you've got to stretch it out. Oh, it's too tight. There's tightness in there that's causing the pain, which is completely not true now that I know that. And that kind of led me into muscle activation technique. And muscle activation technique was developed by Greg Roskopf. He's based out of Denver, Colorado. And he developed this. It's an amazing technique. It's a deep dive into anatomy. It's also like being able to perform a diagnostic on the body to look for and identify muscle weakness. And then using this technique, you kind of go in and you activate the muscle. And so I've had a lot of MAT done on me personally, and that was how I got to see like the efficacy of it. So I decided to go and do it. I quickly realized or saw that nobody in the MAT world was kind of translating this, if you will, into yoga. Like there was no yoga teachers that had studied MAT. It was like almost like I was one of the first. And I realized, okay, I need to figure out how to translate this into my yoga practice. So that's how applied yoga anatomy and muscle activation, AYAMA, came about. And I really kind of did it for my own students. I lead yoga teacher trainings, and I wanted like a good, solid anatomy program. I felt like it was really lacking, not just in mine, but in the broader yoga world. And doing that course, I really realized too, like a lot of yoga teachers talk about anatomy and parts of the body and muscles, but they have no idea where those muscles are most of the time and what those muscles do. And like one thing that you hear a lot of yoga teachers say is like, we have to open the hips, and now you even hear fitness trainers talking about opening the hips. But if you ask those fitness trainers, and especially if you ask the yoga teachers, like, okay, well, you're talking about opening the hips. What does that biomechanically mean? And what muscles are involved? And what is the function of those muscles? Most of them won't be able to answer even the first question, let alone the second, and definitely not the third. So I wanted to create something that the yoga teachers could really bite into. And so I started teaching it. And what I started discovering was that like people would come to my trainings dealing with sort of pain issues, deep chronic shoulder pain, knee pain, hip pain, inner groin pain, lower back pain. Somewhere around day 6 to day 10, everybody would become pain-free. And their range of motion improved dramatically. And they had strength in that range of motion. And so as I started getting into this more and more, I started realizing maybe I'm onto something. And then at the end of last year, beginning of this year, no, I'm sorry, this is going back to 2021, 22. I was kind of like, what do I want to do? Do I want to take this bigger or just keep it in-house? And again, I felt like purpose was knocking at the door of my heart. And that's sort of why I started developing this whole stop stretching stuff.
Yeah, no, and that's amazing. Amazing layout, exactly what it is. We were joking about the coffin before, and I actually had one occur here, but I actually personally do my own different style of yoga, which is DDPY, which is a huge like wrestler based yoga program. And I do that for the morning, and then I lift in the afternoon. Like I said, with the racing, when it's racing season, I'll do yoga every day, run every day, but then vice versa, throwing the gym in there too. And yeah, no, it done phenomenal wonders for me, and I'm right now I'm not as yoga heavy as I should be, but I can go wonders on how it completely flipped my life around.
Yeah, yoga, as a practice is phenomenal. And what I'm trying to do is get people to begin flipping the script on the stretching part of it. Kind of these words, stretching and flexibility, have kind of really hijacked yoga. Yoga teachers constantly talk about like, we need to open our hips, we need to stretch our hamstrings out. And it's like, well, first of all, why is that important? Second of all, it doesn't really address muscle tightness. And so, we don't, like, if you ask most people, like, why are muscles tight? They'll be like, well, just because they're tight. And because I'm just a tight person. Well, that's not really true. Your muscles are tight because your body is sensing instability in it, and it's sending out like message, tighten up, tighten up, tighten up. So I've suffered severely from tight hamstrings in my life. And now I know, like, it's related to my hip flexors. My hip flexors are not activated. They're not contracting properly. And so my hamstrings are tightening up as a result. And so a lot of like personal work that I do is revolved around like making sure that my hip flexors are tight. I'm sorry, are activated and working properly. And it's like I've got actually on my YouTube channel, I've got 3 or 4 hamstring videos. And it's like okay, check your range of motion, see how far it goes. Now do these exercises. And we don't stretch, we're not pulling on the leg, it's all dynamic. But all of a sudden, it's like you finish it. And even I'm like surprised at myself. It's like, oh my God, look how far my leg is moving now, because I'm getting my hip flexors, working properly. And it's like flipping the scripts. It's like if you're folding forward and you can only reach your hands to your knees, you're standing, you're folding forward, your hands are at your knees. Most people would say, oh, that person has got really tight hamstrings, or that person's got a tight lower back. And it's like, no, the muscles in the abdominals are not contracting. They're not shortening properly. And the quads are not shortening properly. And so there's tightness, and that tightness is showing up due to a lack of range of motion.
Absolutely. No, and I never heard it broken down like that, especially with someone that's got tight hamstrings. I could barely touch my feet until I started obviously mixing yoga mixed with running. And, I finally, when I was running for my marathon, I could finally touch my feet.
I'm going to send you my 3 hamstring videos, and I want you to start alternating them, on days like every day. And you're going to notice a huge difference in not only your running, but also in like your workouts, like those days that you're doing legs. Because when you start activating your muscles properly, it's like you're bringing more of your body to the table. So like a lot of bodybuilders, I'll use bench press as an example. Like a lot of bodybuilders are doing bench pressing, but their pecs aren't really contracting properly. And so if the pecs aren't contracting properly, other muscles start taking over and doing, the job that the pecs, like in a bench press, maybe the pecs should be doing, 50 to 80% of the job. But now they're not working. So now the other little muscles are doing 100% of the job. And so when we get our body working properly, we bring more of ourselves to the table. And you being a runner probably can appreciate this. Like one of the things that runners always do is jab each other, I've heard, because a lot of runners end up developing runner's butt, a flat butt.
Yep. I'm just thicker right now because I'm working out at the gym because I want to be like a hybrid. But yeah, when I'm at the peak of running for a marathon, yes, you could tell the legs are flexing out and they're swollen. But yeah, I have no butt. I have zero butt.
So you want to make sure like the glutes are working properly. And one of my kind of like theories is like, runners are running and their glutes are not working for whatever reason. I mean, there's like a lot of different reasons. So if runners could start making sure that before they run, that their glutes are really solid, and activated, that's a better word, like activated. When I say activate, I mean like there's a brain to muscle connection, like the connection in the neuromuscular system is strong. Then when they go for a run, they're actually going to start using their glutes, and their glutes will start growing again. But if you go in with a depleted system, you're going to come out even more depleted. You can never start from a weak place and expect to get stronger. You have to start from a stronger place to get stronger.
Well, and that's going to be the easy, I don't want to say the easiest softball, but that you just threw me the best softball I can possibly throw. Where can I direct all my listeners to learn about all that sweet information?
So go to yogiaaron.com. That's YOGIAARON. And yeah, there's access to my YouTube channel. But if you want to jump ahead, just go to YouTube and type in again, Yogi Aaron, and you'll come to my channel. I have tons of practices there. And then I have my book that's coming out on Amazon. So you can go to Amazon and search Stop Stretching and get your copy there as well.
Absolutely, man. Thank you very much for coming on the show here, guys. And just like this episode and many others, go visit his information, go buy his book, and go give us a rating, whatever it is. Tell us how we can do better on this podcast, or even how he can, how he sounded. Like go to him, leave rating on his website. Just let us know how we can do better on both ends here. So thank you very much for coming on the show. I'm definitely going to stay in touch because we didn't even tap in your 3/4 of your other story here. So I want to have you back.
And we need to get you to Costa Rica soon.
Join me, man. And I will be going to if I do go there, I'm going to take a few days. I'm going to go out deep sea fishing. So,
Absolutely.
all right, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chad. Be well.